Every once in a while, a cinematic masterpiece comes along in life that will shift my perspective due to its narratives and poignant questions that it proposes. Themes that are needed in our species to help further our thinking and imagination towards more lofty ideals, such as reaching the stars or examining our own internal biases and patterns that can be altered and changed for the better, potentially uniting humanity under a common goal. Films like this should be considered important due to their cultural relevance and impact on society, becoming something of a zeitgeist that philosophers and critics will look back on to help explain what exactly our people's thoughts and opinions were at the time. Films like this deserve preservation as a result, ingraining themselves in history forever preserved. And then there's Zombeavers. You didn't think I was gonna say all that with like a bunch of flowery crap and actually be serious, did you? Absolutely not, that's not what we're here for. As a canister of medical waste scenically drifts through the countryside, eventually it would make contact with the local population of beavers. It is unknown what was in the receptacle, but what is known is this movie was made by a bunch of crackheads. It will shift their behavior, strength, and durability of these creatures, making them much more of a threat. But therein lies the question. How exactly is this disease spread, and why do beaver genetics seem to imprint upon those who become infected? Let's discuss that in today's episode over Zombeaver. Also, fun fact, if you want to save yourself 90 minutes, you can just listen to the song during the credits. It pretty much sums up everything that's happening. Zombeavers. Being about as insane as this movie, I think you're really gonna like this. What if I told you that not only could you be given a free legendary champion as well as 2 strong epic heroes using my link only, but you could also win a free gaming console, literally free, and a gaming console. And if that's not your thing, what about Amazon gift cards with a total value of $10,000 and a lot of other in-game prizes? How do you win this? Simple. Raid Shadow Legends, who's my sponsor today, are celebrating the arrival of spring in Teleria with a special spring hunt minigame. Simply download Raid using the link in my description or by scanning the QR code and head to springhunt.plarium.com and enter your Raid ID to join the competition. Taking place between April 15th and May 30th, players will need to find hidden items around Mistwood. By doing so, you can win real-life prizes like the gaming console or the Amazon gift cards, or in-game loot like legendary champions and skill tomes. Along with this, Community Week is being celebrated, and since we all know people love like free stuff, they're giving everyone a legendary champion, Chronicler Adeline, and a promo code to all users. She places valuable debuffs while bypassing the block debuffs buff. Just log in for 7 days between April 11th and July. And I can hear you now, but it's pay to win. It's a time grinder. There's no depth. In rapid response style, there are actually a lot of in-game players who never pay to win, but if you do want to speed up the process, you can do that. The auto battle feature can help you actually spend your time more efficiently, and Raid has a ton of content with more being added all the time. It's not just some lame generic mobile game, I suppose. But personally, I like playing it because I just build my champions out, and I've always enjoyed that type of gameplay. So I mean, this is what I do. But let me ask you something. What do you think your best looking champion is, and why is it Elhain? So if you're ready to jump into the fun by clicking the link in my description or scanning the QR code, you can get insane bonuses available only via my link. Bonuses like a huge starter pack with epic champion Tyrell from the High Elves, and after reaching level 25, you'll get another including epic Rector Drath. So if you go directly like an app store, you won't get these packages that the Raid team has given me. So after downloading the game via my link, use promo code SpringHunt24 to get silver, and this is for both new and existing players. Come find me under the name Roanoke and join my clan Croatoan, and we'll be legends together. Just hit the link in the description and I'll see you on the battlefield. We kick off our story with the same question as always. Why, God? Music begins playing as something about a hole in some guy's heart. The medical research facility waste truck is driving along with 2 guys talking about having kids and dating other guys. Longhair hears a lot of himself in Bill Burr's story and makes a pass but completely fails the vibe check. He goes on to say that he also can't take a dump at his friend's house anymore. You know, standard interaction amongst males, really. Now yeah, this is how this episode's gonna go. Strap in. So, Driver gets on his phone and completely explodes a deer in the process, and as he does, some of the medical waste drops into the water below. Checking the front, well, I don't think Bambi's gonna make it. Running over it and just sort of moving on, we get the intro. Beavers and medical waste. What more could you possibly want? An explanation as to why it happens? Well, I'm gonna give it a hell of a shot, and I think I have an idea on why it's happening based on what we'll see later. But you're gonna have to bear with me on this one. Anyways, just to kind of sum it up, horizontal gene transfers, baby. So the medical waste continues floating down the river, going over rocks, through rapids, and finally reaches a calmer stream. As it gently floats up to a bunch of beavers on a dam, it is then pierced by, assumedly, a stick. Of course, how did a stick pierce metal? That's a solid question. No one really knows. The material contained within begins spraying all over the dam. We now jump over to a gas station as Blondie here has just been cheated on as she's crying in a bathroom. Getting a text, Sam then texts her sorry with a sad face. Yeah, that should work. Dude on the outside of the bathroom has to blow it up as a trucker then kind of makes a pass as Blondie comes out and then runs inside the bathroom. Getting to the Prius, they then start their drive to the cabin for the weekend. No phones and no boys. Zoe wants to call up the guys to get them to come over as everyone has like an insanely deep southern accent. Like, I live down here and you just do not run across these accents. Heading into Ashwood, we see victim number 1 is already fishing. As he pulls in what he thinks is a fish, why is he wearing a number 1 dad hat? I just noticed that. He does not look old enough. And then again, I mean, you know, as I get older, even college students look like way too young to be alive to me, so it is what it is. But then he hears growling and then gets totally got. Pulling up to the stabbing cabin, Zoe asks about the raft because she thought it was trash. Also, that lake, with that stagnant of water, brain-eating amoebas are there for sure. What are brain-eating amoebas? I'm glad you asked. Apart from prions and basically rabies, this horrifies me to my core. So this has nothing to do with the movie, but doesn't have really anything to do with you. But summer is coming up, and innately, every year, without fail, I'm terrified of getting brain-eating amoebas. I actually became a scientist originally because I wanted to, like, know your enemy type of deal, and now it's just become, my god, I know too much, the world is horrifying. Naegleria fowleri is a type of amoeba that if water gets absolutely blasted at high pressure up your nose, and it has to be high pressure as water just kind of getting into your nose will typically not cause an infection, but once in your nose, it will be drawn to the external nasal nerve due to the electrical activity at the top of the nose where an entryway to the brain is located. Now, the problem is its ability to absolutely duck the immune system. Once entering the brain, it's a two-pronged issue. The first is that the immune system, specifically neutrophils, will have difficulty destroying it as it's highly mobile and reproduces so quickly. Along with that, it appears as though neutrophils may engage in immunopathological responses that make the situation worse. The second issue is the absolute delicate tissue that is contained within your skull, neuronal tissue specifically. Your immune system has to fight in this area without destroying your brain, which it's not very good at. So once in the brain, the amoebas will actually start to eat neurons as the body begins panicking, as meningitis becomes a staple quite quickly, putting pressure on the brain. Eventually though, the fight is lost and the person succumbs. Naegleria fowleri exists in every body of water in the southern and like southeastern and probably also southwestern United States, as well as in the soils. But as things warm up, it's moving northward, with some infections recently having taken place in Iowa. Now, you might notice something strange about that. If it's so prevalent, then why aren't infections higher? Every year, a few people do get infected and then succumb, but it's actually exceedingly rare for the amount of people that go into lakes. Antibodies have been found within people, which suggests the body had already fought off Naegleria previously, as an infection has clearly been confirmed. And I know everyone here has probably seen the Kurzgesagt video over it where it says the immune system cannot do anything about the infection, but that's clearly not true. The immune system did do something to clear the infection as it remembers the invader and then created antibodies. I still repped Kurzgesagt though, amazing channel, but I think it gave everyone a false impression as to what's actually happening. It should be known though that these antibodies could be obtained from drinking water contaminated with the parasite, which is pretty much all of our water, and your body can become aware of it as it's in your intestines. So does a nose infection play a role in being the only point of entry that it can actually evade the immune system? Conspiracy time. Well, it's not really a conspiracy, but I'll take a swag at it. Or, as I learned this weekend, a scientific wild-ass guess that once exposed to Naegleria, the immune system has a much better chance at preventing it from growing out of control, even when it does enter the nose. Because of the circulating antibodies, these would attach to the amoeba and begin immobilizing it immediately, rather than the body having to respond with the adaptive immune system too late. The innate immune system does play a critical response role in dealing with the parasite early on, before it grows out of control. To those that haven't been exposed, potentially those in the northern latitudes or from like different countries, appear maybe more at risk as they do not possess the antibodies necessary, but take that with a grain of salt because even people from the north have likely been exposed, which means they would have a stronger innate immune response, or pretty much a more effective one. We likely all have this given how prevalent the amoeba is, so should you worry about it? Probably not. Do I worry about it because disease terrify and interest me? Yes. Just hold your nose when you jump into a lake or warm body of water, and don't stir up the soils and mud at the bottom, and you'll probably be fine. So Zoe asks if they're stopping for gas at the cabin. Smart one, this gal. Everyone here definitely got invited to the Mensa convention. As they talk about swimming in the lake, the neighbor comes over to meet them. Mary introduces her sorority sisters as Zoe keeps going on and on about talking with guys and like going wild with, it doesn't really matter. As the older woman says, "Oh, don't worry about it. My daughter's a real piece of trash too, and not even that attractive." Okay then. So as they walk off, they are being watched from the water. Heading inside, the dog CGIPs as Jen heads into the bathroom. Jen tries to text Sam, but her phone is dead. Mary says Jen isn't supposed to be talking to Sam, as then they hear Zoe scream as she comes out saying there's no cell service. So, heading out to the lake because there's literally nothing else to do, Zoe immediately dishes her top. Well, can't show you that. She's the first to go in, as then they go out to the raft. The number 1 dad hat ominously floats by. I need to get that hat, actually. And looking over, they see a beaver dam. Wanting to see a beaver, Mary says not to get their hopes up because they are nocturnal. Jen then heads into the water to swim over to it and check it out while the rest of the group follows, as the medical waste container is still there. How this lake hasn't been contaminated is beyond me. Covered in green fluid, they just assume it to be beaver pee. Yes, that tracks. And not seeing any beavers, they do see a bear just randomly across the lake. A shot then rings out as the bear just sort of leaves. Random dude, who I cannot be sure isn't the trucker from the bathroom earlier, then calls them pretty little heifers. Not really sure how that was supposed to land before telling them to put some clothes on because there's decent families around here, as they walked off a little creeped out. As they retreat from Smith with a Y, who's also out looking for beaver, they walk off talking mad smack while being watched by something else. So as night falls, they continue to drink and eat popcorn. Jen has got a massive bruise on her knee IRL. Not relevant to anything, I just noticed it. So they call Jen's dad hot as a cameraman then runs through the grass. As they sit, they begin hearing a thumping noise on the outside of the house. Hearing it again, Zoe goes to check it out. Recipe for disaster, but here we go. Heading outside, the door closes behind them and then it locks. A man then runs from the darkness before completely crapping his pants. Hashtag relate. Well, okay, I'm not gonna say hashtag relatable, never mind. So as the guys are there, they then start making fun of Mary because she wanted to be alone at the cabin with the girls, and then hearing another thud. Oh great, Sam is here, the guy who just cheated on Jen. I'm sure this is gonna go over about as well as a wet fart in church. Buck then talks about waking members of his body up because it's been over 36 hours. This dude is an absolute wild card. Jen says that they can stay there as everyone heads inside to basically hook up. Sam then tries to make a move, but it's like totally denied. Like, bro, how did you think that was actually gonna go? Also, why does Sam look like he's always about to cry in this movie? Jen then asks if she knows the woman that he was making out with, and he blames it on being drunk. Classic. Getting slapped twice, she gets up to go, as then he kind of like corners her, but then he gets kneed in the crotch. And again, I have to ask, how did you think that was gonna go? Heading over to the shower, Jen hears a noise in the shower and opening up the shower curtain. Oh, that's right. There's actually like beavers in this movie. I forgot about that. I finally made an appearance. She runs out of the bathroom crying as Buck comes out and says, "Who's crying on vacation?" and then just tells her she's a really ugly crier. Bro, this guy is an absolute wild card. Heading to the bathroom, why is Sam holding a bat like that? He takes forever though, so Tommy grabs the bat and opens the door and sees nothing. Buck then starts walking in and be like, "Is this the bathroom? Is this where it happened?" Like, I don't know, man. So, the Zombeaver comes out from underneath the sink as Tommy proceeds to beat the ever-living hell out of it as Buck starts screaming, literally breaking the beaver in half almost. This appears to stun it enough to get it to stop moving, although we will find out it is not down for the count. Getting a garbage bag, Tommy then tosses the thing on the porch and it has some serious bounce to it. They assume it to just be rabies, although its eyes were completely hazed over and it appears to lack pupils, but that's probably not what it was. It's probably just really hazy. It didn't bite anyone as they discuss rabies shots hurting and the nearest hospital being like 30 miles away, which how much time do you actually have after being bitten? I'm glad you asked. This is basically a science-based channel and there's gotta be some science in Zombeavers. I'm sorry it has to be this way. Like we need to talk about some actual pathology. So first and foremost, those who watch this channel know that I love rabies. And by love, I mean it ranks up there with prions and braiding amoebas in terms of how horrifying I find it. You guys get to learn all of my fears in this episode. Rabies, hailing from the order of Mononegavirales and being in the family Rhabdoviridae, is a virus almost shaped like a bullet in some instances. Once being introduced into the skin of a person through a bite, what's horrifying is it might take a few days for symptoms to arise, or it might take like literally a year after the bite for symptoms to arise. And what's even worse than that is a lot of people who contract rabies don't even know they were bitten by anything because they get bitten in the night while they were sleeping. The first symptoms are usually a tingling, prickling, or itching in the area, indicating that the nervous system has become actively involved with the infection process. And as it enters the nervous system, it will specifically move through the motor neurons via the neuromuscular junctions, or through the sensory nerves by infecting specifically the nerve spindles. It will then begin to move nerve by nerve in the peripheral nervous system, making its way towards the central nervous system. It is at this point that if you can still get to the hospital and receive the vaccine for rabies, this will probably allow your body enough time to fight off the infection. If you choose not to do this though, the P protein diene LC8, which operates as an axonal transport protein, will allow for the rabies to spread along the microtubules of a neuronal cell. This rapid transport will take the virus to your spinal cord and eventually your brain. Once symptoms begin here, you will have things like shaking, confusion, and hydrophobia. It is too late. Rabies is virtually 100% fatal, and I say virtually because there have been some exceedingly rare instances where people have survived, and some people actually have antibodies to rabies despite never appearing to contract it or receive the vaccines for it. This indicates that they were exposed at some point, yet they didn't succumb. Of course, with modern medicine, there is an emerging treatment that I mentioned before called the Milwaukee Protocol. Essentially, if a person is chemically induced into a coma, they will be pumped full of antiviral medication combined with ketamine and amantadine. I always get that word mixed up with something else, but this will slow the virus enough to allow for the adaptive immune system to become aware, especially if you give them the vaccine, and begin building antibodies to the rabies. Because again, remember, the human immune system absolutely has the ability to fight virtually any disease ever. It's just a question of, can it mobilize before too much damage is done in the ensuing fight, or if the immune system is actively destroying the body. So if the beavers have rabies, much like many other animals, or any mammals really, because it's a mammal-based disease, they would exhibit some pretty alarming symptoms. In fact, back in 2023, there was a 50-pound beaver that attacked a youngling swimming in a Georgia lake. It was totally rabid. They said the beaver began acting crazy, as they put it, and it is known to cause brain inflammation. Like, brain inflammation will do that. So all in all, if you're ever bitten by an animal, if it can be trapped, you need to trap it to figure out if it did have rabies. And if you cannot, use standard procedure, which is assume everything and everyone is infected with everything. Terrible way to live your life, but a great way to try not to contract something. Go to the hospital and get your rabies vaccine immediately, and the good news is that you can pet all the rabid animals you'd like for 6 months to 2 years, because that's about how long the vaccine lasts. Also, future Roanoke here, that is a joke. Do not pet rabid animals. So Buck talks about how he likes women, and he's like, oh, I'm also 6'3", and we should have a safety orgy, as it could be our last night alive. Bro, what in the living hell? So Smith with a Y is in the woods, and he's setting up Zombeaver traps, and then hears growling. Leaving the area, there's a nice flyover of the river. So the next morning, everyone kind of like exits out of the cabin, and legit, they look hungover. Literally my friend group, whenever we go to my buddy's lake house, as in they find the bag from last night has been broken into, and bloody footprints are left behind. They then take their beer to the lake and all head towards the raft. Jen stays on the shore while the rest of them get into the water with Sam and Mary, specifically on the raft. Mary asks about the mysterious photo, as Sam says at least Jen doesn't know it was her. So Tommy is watching this sort of unfold as they keep pressuring Jen to get into the water. Mary and Sam are real pieces of shit. As Jen gets in, something swims past her foot, which is my literal nightmare fuel. As it swims towards the group, Buck gets pulled under as blood starts coming up as his foot was bitten off. The camera then zooms in literal Jaws style on Jen as Tommy starts getting attacked as well. As they make a break for the raft, the beavers keep attacking Buck. Buck then lays down getting onto the raft bleeding as they need to tourniquet it. Zoe then tries to take her top off again as they use a dog's flotation device to tie off the leg. So actually, I have some EMT training, and you never know when this might be useful. If I pop into your head when you need to use this, I'm not saying it's hilarious because it will be useful, but I'm just saying it helped. So if you need to tourniquet a body part, you need to leave it tourniqueted, and I'm not really sure if that's the past tense verb or not, it doesn't really matter. Anyhow, what you do is you take a shirt and you tie it in a loop. Get a stick and then run it through that loop and then put that around the limb that you need to tourniquet and then start spinning the stick. This will continuously build tension and is stronger than just trying to basically hold it with your hand. Once the bleeding stops, you either need a way to you have to either hold the stick in place or find a way to prevent it from unwinding, which will release the pressure. And now you have stopped somebody from bleeding out from a arm or leg wound. The only issue is the higher up it is, like if you get shot in the groin, there's no way to tourniquet that. Obviously you can't tourniquet the abdomen, the chest, or the head. So yeah, pretty much just, I don't know, maybe like mid-upper arm down and mid-upper thigh down is about the best that's gonna work. Anyways, Jen heads back to the house to call for help, but the beavers have chewed through the lines. As they circle the raft and go under the water, they start punching holes through the raft as Jen is attacked in the house. So Jen holds back the one attacking her, the glaucoma is real on this thing, and on the raft, Sam then grabs the dog and throws it overboard as the beavers then chase it and then drag it under. Sam is a turbo douche. They then jump into the water and swim towards shore. Moving to the island, Jen is able to stab the beaver holding it in place as the group runs in. Also, the beaver is like, in half? That is definitely the one from last night. Phrasing. That night, the beavers have surrounded the house, and despite their grievous wounds, it is still alive, or at least the one in the kitchen. Well, maybe. Jen suggests maybe it isn't alive. Sam then stabs it in the head as Buck sleeps with his foot. Tommy tries to use a landline, but the Beavers have chewed through said lines. So Zoe breaks out the information about how Mary was in the picture with Sam, and Tommy didn't know that. Yeah, Tommy, time to ditch that gal. Then start hearing thumping noises outside as the Beavers are trying to communicate with the one inside as it starts tail thumping as well. Sam takes its head off and then throws it at the Beavers, which seems to enrage them a little bit as they look out and he sees all the eyes in the darkness. Okay, so now that we have properly seen the Beavers, I need to discuss what exactly is going on with them to exist as the way they do. So first, let's establish what we see concerning their physical presentation of symptoms. Their eyes have become rapidly hazy, and this indicates the cells are lysing due to anoxia, dehydration, or potentially acidosis. Corneal thickness decreases almost immediately post-mortem, which then causes it to become hazy. This process indicates the eyes are having extreme issues, specifically with oxygen supplementation, indicating that potentially the circulatory system has ceased functioning. As the process continues, blood would quickly coagulate within the vessels, which is why blood does not appear to be coming out of a beaver as it receives its injuries. Now, what I do find interesting is that the tissue is still red and not a congealed blue and purple mess, indicating that the cells are still actually alive. Once again, much like the Diary of the Dead episode, considering this is Zombeaver, this would indicate that the metabolism, or at least some of the more crucial cells, have been altered to become anaerobic in order to allow for the creature to functionally survive, but at a decreased capacity. This decreased capacity would cause the body to need more food than normal, or what it would be considered normal, as anaerobic metabolisms are massively inefficient in comparison with the aerobic one. For reference, 38 ATP molecules are produced by aerobic respiration, which means there's air, and a measly 2 molecules are produced by anaerobic respiration. Because of this, more nutrition than average would be needed. Continuing on to what I also find strange is even with the beaver bisected at its midsection, it is still able to tap its tail regardless of its grievous wounds. These wounds themselves are now survivable due to the apparent altering of the metabolism, but this would seem to indicate that the cells themselves are operating independently and are just kind of more of a colony sort of deal. Of course, the tail tapping would have to come from the actual brain giving the orders, and look, I mean, the movie is Zombeavers. There's no shot that this tail is actually working via the brain's orders, as the spinal cord has been severed, not allowing for this communication, but it's happening regardless. However, as we will see, this behavior is intrinsically rooted in the infected, which the infected are about to show up, as we will see, which means that genetically these creatures have changed. The question remains, though, to what capacity have they changed, and how has it been imprinted on others? Well, we'll talk about that momentarily. So next door, the neighbors are just sort of hanging out, as then they take Buck's foot, as Zoe says she's gonna go with Tommy. Somehow Tommy knows beavers are not that fast on land, and the plan is to take the Prius into town, along with Buck and Zoe, to get some help. Getting to the car, they get inside, having survived but this is a hybrid, apparently he needs to finesse it. I'm not really sure if that's true. And inside they watch as the beaver then attacks the window. And Sam has some trouble moving, he goes to push the TV, and can't do it, so he starts screaming, "Help me," as then he just leaves the women to do it, declaring the girls are now safe with him. Oh yeah, bro, you totally got this. Over at the neighbor's house, they talk about having heard screaming and tires screeching. Can you even screech the tires on a Prius? I have no idea. As the owner pets the golden retriever, the husband says, "You don't want me to go check it out, otherwise I'll just have to join the college girls' party." At what age can you no longer say that? Reaching back down though, he now pets a Zombeaver. As the Prius heroically drives, never thought I'd say that in my life, they approached an intentionally downed tree. Obviously just used the Prius's raw power and strength to drag the tree away. I mean, come on now. So looking back, they then spot a truck, specifically an F-Series. More specifically, a 1972 F-Series. Again, the 70s for trucks, whether they were Ford or Chevy, just a chef's kiss time to be alive. These bad boys came usually with an unkillable 302, a 360, or a 390, and I mean, you could also get them with a 240 or a 300, but let's be real here, it's a truck, and you probably want to use it as a truck. This would give you around 140 to 255 horsepower respectively, with around 230 pound-foot of torque or 376 pound-foot of torque, and that was a range. So you see that hill on the side, they could easily just drive over that, or just drive straight over the actual downed tree. The truck could handle it pretty easily. Of course, Smith with a Y didn't do the cool thing and jacked the truck up slightly and put some Falcon Wild Peaks AT3Ws on that bad boy, so it's diminished slightly in the looks department and possibly capabilities, but either way, it can still be saved. So looking in the back, they find an axe and some force multipliers, and handing Zoe the axe, Tommy then tells her to get in the car and turn it around. He's gonna go on foot and get some help. Buck then apologizes for never heading south with Zoe. blood loss maybe, as Tommy then screams. Looking back, a tree has fallen on him, crushing him. Expertly planned by the Zombeavers. One then goes after Zoe as she misses with the axe swing, but Smith with a Y clay pigeons that thing, and heading back to his truck, they get in and then head towards the cabin. So back at the cabin, they start boarding up the house, really focusing on that one nail in the door as they continue putting everything they can in front of the windows, which doesn't really work as Mary starts stabbing a Zombeaver in the most ridiculous way possible. Smith with a Y then starts telling Zoe about beaver fever hitting the area a while back, caused by the Giardia parasite, which this is actually a real thing. Beavers usually carry Giardia, it's very strange. But it also regularly affects humans too because of it that they're carrying it, and it's mostly diarrhea as Smith asks them if they have diarrhea. Smith with a Y then starts saying he caught one in a trap, only it wasn't dead and it should have been dead. Also, if you're curious about this parasite, essentially it is caused, again, by the Giardia parasite, of course, and it'll attach itself to the lining of the small intestine and actively block absorption of fats and carbohydrates, and this in turn will cause people to absolutely crap their brains out, necessitating the need for electrolytes and clean water. Your body can clear the parasite in a couple of weeks on its own, and most people really don't show any symptoms, but if you do show symptoms, good lord, hang on for dear life. So at the cabin, they continue trying to repel the attack as the Zombeavers appeared to give up. Looking out the window, the truck then pulls up as they start pulling boards off the door to try to let them in. Getting on the porch, Smith with a Y takes pot shots at them instead as they decide to head for the neighbor's house as Smith with a Y covers their retreat. Get into the house, they then shut the doors as Mary asks if they think Tommy's okay. Yeah, he's fine. Probably. Maybe. No, he's not likely. No, he's not fine. Searching the neighbor's house, nobody appears to be home. Smith with a Y tells them it's wishful thinking to think that somebody would be there. Finding evidence of a struggle, they then find the husband has succumbed to beaver wounds trying to get to the phone. The phone lines have also been chewed through. Smith with a Y then says they like to chew through stuff like twigs and grasses, so maybe they like to chew through wires as well. Smith with a Y then heads upstairs and back over to the cabin. Sam starts asking Mary when was the last time she actually picked up a book. Sam tells her to look up zombie beavers. It's actually Zombeavers, bro. Just like house cats thinking humans are big dumb cats, beavers apparently think humans are beavers as well. They live up to 24 years, as Sam remarks, just like us. I think we live a little longer than 24 years. And beavers are monogamous. Not like us, as Mary says. It's just one of those things. Sam then says once they are far away from the cabin, they can sit down like adults and they can figure out why both the women find him attractive. Dude, what? So as Jen reads the book, she finds out that they are excellent at building tunnels. Meanwhile, upstairs at the neighbor's house, Smith with a Y finds the wife, just says, okay, and then leaves. Zoe is packing ice onto Buck's foot as she wants to try to get it reattached. Smith with a Y asks when that foot came off, and she says 4 to 5 hours ago, and I'm pretty sure the tissue at that point at room temperature is totally donezo, unless you're like a huge fan of gangrene. So he tells her the beavers are more active during the night and they aren't going anywhere, and they would have to get the foot reattached within an hour. So he says, I can cauterize the stump if need be. Back over at the cabin, Mary is laying down to go to sleep as Jen enters the room. Hey, yo, hold up. Hovering over Mary, she does say that, hey, I don't really like you like that, as Jen begins turning. Her fingernails begin growing as she starts growing beaver teeth, and then her pupils disappear. That's right. This transforms you into a freaking zombie beaver. Did you see that coming? Because I didn't. We're going to see more examples of this, so we'll kind of talk about that here in a moment. So Sam runs in and then knocks her out, as at the neighbor's house, they are warming up a blade to cauterize the wound. Unwrapping the wound, they hear a growl in the distance, and looking outside, they don't see anything, as player 3 has entered the game with Buck getting back up and attacking Smith with a Y, eating his face with a K. As Zoe then totally botches the shot, she then takes out Smith, doming him and missing Buck as he continues to eat Smith with a Y's face with a K. Is the joke funnier the second time? No, it was just as bad as the first. Moving on. As Beaver then thumps the floor, breaking the tarsal bones in several locations as she tried to escape. Running upstairs, she gets trapped as Mary and Sam continue to board the door back at the other cabin. Jen is on the other side of the door, thumping her tail as well. And this is awkward. Do you think it was awkward to film? Sam then says she's going to be on medication for the rest of her life, so just kind of ignore her. The Zombeavers then start breaking through the floorboards as it becomes a game of Whack-A-Beaver. Zoe, upstairs in the same room with the old lady, who then rips out some of her hair, tries to take a pot shot at her, but she's out of ammo, so she just swan dives out the window. There had to be a better way to do that, but the fall then knocks her unconscious. At the house, they continue smacking the beavers while Jen is going ham in the other room, as then they run into the bathroom. Sam then says the truck is still running as Mary tells Sam to take off the rest of his clothes so she can see if he was bitten. So she does the same, and then it turns into something way more, as it usually does, you know, end of the world, kind of like just a massive party sort of deal. But as that's going on, one of the beavers then chews on a wire and lights the cabin on fire. And this sort of shows that the beavers may just be chewing on things because of a natural inclination to do so, and not really some desire to isolate potential prey. So then Jen breaks through the floorboard and bites off Sam's gear. Oh my God! Just take me out of that point, bro. Oh God, that looks painful. So Mary then makes a run for it as Zoe drives through the wall as they run into Smith with a Y, who's been zombified. Of course, what's interesting is, and I'll just kind of like get into this for a second, it appears as though some of the brain is still very clearly functional, at least concerning muscle memory, which we'll kind of get into the instincts of everything here in a moment, but Smith with a Y is able to take a pot shot at them, which this is fine muscle movement and something that he obviously has done a lot of and is familiar with. So was it a conscious thought or a muscle memory? It's kind of hard to say. But anyways, because a pot shot was taken, Zoe crashes, nice driving gal, as they look out at the others who were infected and they start approaching the car. And then a literal representation of Bucky's growls in the distance, and I know it's a Zombear, but still it basically looks like Bucky's. So they get a truck started and then drive out of there as Jen is on the truck. They stop as she goes flying forward, and then they just sort of casually run over her as Zoe says she never liked her anyways. That's pretty brutal. The neighbor and Zombeaver then work together to bite down a tree but miss. Driving further, they do have to stop as the tree is in their way. Go up on the embankment or just drive over the tree. So as they walk, for some reason Tommy is changing despite having been crushed by a tree, and what's the deal with that? But Zoe walks ahead as Mary pulls a hand held on her, thinking that maybe she's infected, and as she stands there, Mary then turns instead of Zoe as she takes her out with the axe. Double tap, there we go. So having taken out Mary, or at least incapacitated her, Zoe then walks off with her tarsal bones basically shattered, having survived the night. Walking down the middle of the road for some god-awful reason, she sees a truck approaching her. Flagging them down, oh lord, it's the most aware duo ever. They instead splatter spree her, taking her out as well, and thus concludes Zombeaver. One of the hilarious things is evidently they had trouble getting the dog to not play with the beavers in the water when it was supposed to be attacked, as it wanted to just investigate them. But anyhow, that concludes Zombeavers. So to recap, this specific disease, as we have seen, is caused by exposure to this medical waste. This material, having sprayed all over the home of the beavers, exposed them to something that we are unsure of what it actually is. However, here's what we do know about the pathophysiology behind it. First, the cellular metabolism would have to be impacted by this material. Along with this would induce genetic changes to the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, as everyone loves to say. Specifically, however, there is no reason to think that it would just stop there. As the disease sinks deeper into the very functionality of the cell, genetic changes would be happening to the beaver as well, and these changes are critical to understanding why others who have become infected are the way that they are. As the virus enters the cell, it's clear this is a retrovirus of sorts that existed within the canister of the medical waste. Now, what are retroviruses? Essentially, these fall in line and are RNA viruses that deliver genomes into the actual nucleus of a cell that they infect, which in turn is then encoded as DNA into the genome of a eukaryotic cell through the process of utilizing virus-encoded integrase. At this point, the virus will be a part of the cell until the gene is accidentally broken or the person meets their end. This integration of genetic coding can functionally change a cell as well, depending on how the information is added. And in the case of Zombeavers, here's what I believe is happening. The retrovirus affects both the mitochondria's metabolism, shifting it towards anaerobic activity as well as affecting the nucleus of the cell itself. After implanting into the genome, the virus would be built by the cell as those genes would be read. However, it doesn't end there. Because this is medical waste, there is no telling what sort of wild-type variant of virus this is, and as such, this may be the first species that it has run across after being worked on. As a result, I do believe it would have to be built, and there would be a sort of imprint that forms on the virus and how it operates. If you were unaware, viruses can actually have the host imprint on them to a degree, much like how a virus can implant coding into your cells. Sometimes a piece of the cell's genetic coding is incorporated into the virus itself. This possibility may actually be potentially what is influencing evolutionary processes, as DNA from one animal is literally added to another. Now, this is a very rare process and minimally influential as far as we know, and is more likely to take place in prokaryotes interacting with viruses, but it does show that it is possible and we have observed it. As a result of this process, known as horizontal gene transfer, I believe this is how we see those who are affected by the beaver zombification process. This wild type infected the beavers, where a sort of imprint was left on the virus. Multiple genes would then be transferred to a new host from the beaver, inspiring the changes that we see concerning morphology, specifically the nails, teeth growth, and formation of meaty tails. Now, obviously, this would require coordination of like osteoclast and osteoblast, as well as growth of new muscle in an area, which is I mean, that's a little strange, but As the process continues, behaviors would be changed to almost possess a beaver-like quality. Does that sound really stupid? Probably. It's Zombeavers. This is a strange one. So as the infection takes deeper root, it shows that this virus would be a mammalian one based on seeing that the bear was infected, the humans are infected, and the beavers are infected, and then structural physiology is altered as well. Nothing short of multiple genes would have to be implanted into the host genome, allowing for these new traits to form, as well as altering the frontal and parietal lobes and other areas of the brain indicated by behaviors. The lower portions of the brain associated with instinctual behaviors would also be imprinted on, with the new host would have beaver instincts imprinted on them, so that they behave similar to beavers. Now, to wrap this up, because I bet you forgot, what is the deal with Tommy? What happened there? When the tree fell on him, clearly he was reanimated after the fact, which means this virus can infect post-mortem and reanimate cells that are still not totally lysed, but wouldn't be considered alive either, but it would still obviously render somebody partially blind, or at least having put a haze over their eyes. I do not believe this virus to be an airborne issue, but instead based on saliva, much like rabies would be. For this infection to take place, the only way I can really see it happening is if it was maybe like spit left over on a branch that then pierced him. Some of the saliva from the beaver got into the wound, thus infecting and then changing him to become a Zombeaver himself. And this obviously would make him need more nutrients than normal, causing him to turn, and this is the only thing that really makes sense to me. But all in all though, we need to cover something for real here soon, because these movies are absolutely putting the biological possibilities of what can happen in my brain to the absolute limit. What are the kids saying? I'm totally coping. But I want to hear what you guys think. How do you think this disease in Zombeavers work? This is basically in line with what I think. I think it just comes down to mainly a horizontal gene transfer. But let me know down in the comments. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and Roanoke Tales channel link, where last week we talked about the disappearance of Sandra Hughes, who's been seen in the woods several times since, but doesn't really seem to respond to anybody calling out to her. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, huge thank you to our astrophysicist, Death's Dancer. Thank you, sir, as well as our scientist, Chad the Enjoyer of Scientific Explanations of B-grade horror movies. This one was like a Z grade. Dakota 23, Lucian Dragon, Metric System, and Trash Pen in a Trench Coat. And to the rest of my patrons, I appreciate your guys' support as well. Your help goes a long way towards keeping everything running. It's greatly appreciated. All right, so that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.